Zach, let me start with a very honest question, because this is something almost everyone learning English struggles with at some point. Why does listening feel so hard, even for people who can read and write English pretty well? I mean, they open a book and think, yeah, I get this. But the moment someone speaks, everything just flies over their head like birds escaping a cage.
Oh, wow, that image is painfully accurate. And honestly, Lucy, I've been there myself. I think the biggest mistake people make is assuming that listening is just reading, but faster. It's not. Listening is a completely different beast. When we listen, we don't get neat spaces between words. We don't get time to pause and reread. And native speakers don't speak the way textbooks write. They connect sounds, swallow sounds, and sometimes butcher their own pronunciation, and yet somehow understand each other perfectly.
Exactly. And I love that you said different beast, because that's what it feels like. People often come to me and say, Lucy, I know this word. I've seen it before. But when I hear it, I don't recognize it at all. And I usually tell them, that's not because you're bad at English. It's because your brain hasn't learned to map sounds to words yet.
Yes, that sound-to-word mapping is huge. A lot of learners have what I call silent vocabulary. They know the word on paper, but it's basically mute in their head. When they hear it spoken with real-life pronunciation, stress, and rhythm, their brain just doesn't click fast enough. It's like meeting a friend online and then not recognizing them when you see them in real life.
Oh, that's such a good analogy. You're like, wait, is that you? And pronunciation plays a massive role here. If you learned a word with the wrong pronunciation from the start, listening becomes 10 times harder. For example, learners might read the word comfortable and pronounce every single syllable very clearly in their head, but in real life, people say comfortable, and suddenly it sounds like a completely different word.
Totally. And that leads directly to the first big reason people don't understand spoken English: pronunciation. If you can't recognize sounds, you can't understand speech, period. It's not about intelligence, it's not about talent, it's about exposure and training. English has sounds that don't exist in many other languages, and if your ears aren't trained, they just blur together.
And pronunciation doesn't live alone, right? It comes with connected speech. Native speakers link words together like they're in a hurry, which, let's be honest, they usually are. What are you doing becomes what you doing. Did you eat yet becomes did you eat yet? If learners expect to hear every word clearly separated, they're setting themselves up for frustration.
Exactly, and that frustration can be brutal. People start thinking, I've been learning English for years, why do I still not understand? But the real issue is that they've been learning English in pieces, not as a flow. Listening is about rhythm, stress, and melody, not just words stacked together like Lego bricks.
That's such an important point. And the second big reason people don't understand listening is vocabulary. Even if your pronunciation recognition is decent, if your vocabulary is thin, you'll still get lost. You might catch a few key words, but miss the overall meaning, and then your brain panics and everything collapses like a house of cards.
Oh yes, the panic spiral. I know it well. You miss one word, then another, and suddenly you're not listening anymore. You're just worrying about how much you didn't understand. And once anxiety kicks in, your listening ability drops even more. It's a vicious cycle.
And this is where mindset matters. People often expect to understand 100% of what they hear, which is unrealistic, even for native speakers in unfamiliar topics. If you miss a word, it doesn't mean you've failed. It just means you keep listening and use context. Listening is not about catching every word, it's about catching meaning.
Right, and that brings us to training methods. One of the most misunderstood but powerful techniques is dictation. When people hear dictation, they often groan and think of boring school exercises. But done right, dictation is like going to the gym for your ears.
I love that phrase, gym for your ears. Dictation forces you to slow down and pay attention to details you usually ignore. When you listen and write down every word you hear, you suddenly notice sounds you've been skipping for years. You realize, oh, so that's how they pronounce it. Or, wow, I've been hearing that wrong this whole time.
Exactly. Dictation exposes your blind spots. You think you're hearing something, but when you try to write it down, you realize your brain was guessing. And that's not a bad thing. Guessing is natural. Dictation just shines a light on where your guesses don't match reality.
And I always tell learners not to beat themselves up during dictation. It's not a test, it's practice. If you miss words, that's good information. It tells you what to work on. Over time, you'll notice patterns, certain sounds, certain endings, certain reductions that always trip you up.
And there's another hidden benefit of dictation. It improves your pronunciation, too. When you compare what you wrote with the actual script, you're not just learning listening, you're retraining how you say the word in your head. And once your internal pronunciation improves, your listening improves automatically.
Yes, because listening and speaking are two sides of the same coin. You can't separate them completely. If you can't say a sound, chances are you can't hear it clearly either. Dictation quietly bridges that bridge.
Now, on the other end of the spectrum, we have passive listening, or what many people like to call language bathing. This one gets a lot of mixed opinions. Some people swear by it, others say it's useless.
I think the problem is expectations. Passive listening is not magic. If you expect to suddenly understand everything just by playing English in the background while scrolling your phone, you'll be disappointed. But if you use it for the right purpose, it's incredibly powerful.
Exactly. Passive listening is about familiarity, not accuracy. When you listen while cooking, driving, or doing chores, your brain is still absorbing rhythm, intonation, and emotional patterns of the language. You might not understand every sentence, but your brain starts to feel what English sounds like.
It's like background music at a cafe. You're not focusing on every note, but the vibe sinks in. Over time, when you switch to active listening, things feel less foreign. Your brain doesn't go, "What is this noise?" anymore. It goes, "Oh, this feels familiar."
And that familiarity reduces fear. Listening stops feeling like a battlefield and starts feeling like a conversation you're slowly getting used to. Passive listening is especially helpful for people who feel tense when they listen actively. It softens the experience.
I often recommend combining passive listening with content you enjoy. Podcasts, YouTube videos, shows, anything that doesn't make you want to tear your hair out. If you enjoy it, you'll stick with it. And consistency beats intensity every single time.
Couldn't agree more. Listening is not about cramming. It's about showing up regularly, even when progress feels invisible. And trust me, progress is happening, just under the surface.
So if we zoom out and connect everything we've talked about, pronunciation, vocabulary, dictation, passive listening, it all points to one thing. Listening is a skill you train, not a talent you're born with.
Yes, and once learners truly understand that, a lot of frustration melts away. They stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What can I train today?" And that shift makes all the difference.
Exactly. And in the next part, we'll walk through a clear, practical process and talk about materials, routines, and how to actually turn all of this into daily practice without burning out.
Yeah, because understanding the theory is one thing, but having a simple system you can stick to in real life, that's where real progress happens.
All right, let's keep that momentum going.
All right, Lucy. So, picking up exactly where we left off, we've talked a lot about why listening feels so hard and what's actually going on under the hood. Now, let's get practical, because this is usually where people ask, "Okay, I get it, but what do I actually do tomorrow morning when I sit down to practice?"
Yes, this is the million-dollar question. And honestly, the biggest mistake people make here is overcomplicating things. They jump between apps, videos, podcasts, subtitles on, subtitles off, and in the end, they feel busy but not better. So I usually recommend a simple 3-step process that you repeat with the same piece of audio.
I love that. Simple but consistent. So let's break it down. Step 1 is listening for the main idea, right? No subtitles, no script, no pausing every 3 seconds like you're defusing a bomb.
Exactly. In the first listen, your only job is to understand the gist. Who's speaking? What's the general topic? Is the tone serious, funny, emotional? You don't need to catch every word. If you try to, you'll just get stuck in the weeds and miss the forest for the trees.
That phrase is perfect here. People get obsessed with individual words and forget the overall meaning. I always tell learners, pretend you're listening to a friend in a noisy cafe. You don't hear everything, but you still understand what's going on.
And this step is crucial because it trains you to tolerate ambiguity. Real-life listening is messy. You will miss things.
Accepting that actually makes you a better listener. If you demand perfection, your brain tenses up and stops working efficiently.
Right. And once you've got the big picture, we move to step 2, listening deeply. This is where the script comes in. You listen again, but this time you read along, pause when necessary, and look at words you don't know.
Yes, this is where vocabulary and pronunciation finally connect. You see how words are written, how they're reduced, linked, or stressed in real speech. And this is also the best time to do mini dictation if you want, pausing a sentence and trying to write it down before checking the script.
And I think it's important to say, don't look up every single word. If you stop every 5 seconds, you'll kill the flow. Focus on words that seem important or keep appearing. Over time, your vocabulary grows naturally from context.
Exactly. Think of it like cooking a soup. You don't need every spice in the cabinet, just the key ingredients. And during this step, you'll often have aha moments like, oh, that's what they were saying. Those moments are gold.
And then comes my favorite part, step 3, shadowing. This is where listening and speaking really start holding hands.
I love how you put that. Shadowing is when you listen and repeat what the speaker says almost at the same time, copying their rhythm, intonation, and speed. At first, it feels awkward. You'll trip over words, fall behind, and laugh at yourself. And that's totally normal.
Oh yeah, you'll sound like a broken robot at the beginning, but that's part of the process. Shadowing forces your mouth and ears to sync up. You're no longer just understanding English, you're physically producing it in real time.
And something magical happens when you stick with it. Your listening improves because your brain starts predicting sounds. You're no longer waiting for each word to hit you. You're flowing with the speaker.
It's like dancing with the language instead of chasing it. And the best part? Shadowing improves your confidence in speaking too, even if your main goal is listening.
Now, of course, all of this only works if you choose the right materials. This is where the principle of I+1 comes in, content that's just slightly above your current level.
Yeah, if it's too easy, you get bored. If it's too hard, you get discouraged. The sweet spot is understanding about 70 to 80%. You're challenged, but not drowning.
For beginners, I often recommend something like BBC 6-Minute English. The topics are interesting, the length is manageable, and the pronunciation is clear without being unnatural.
And for more advanced learners, TED Talks or the daily podcast are great options. Real voices, real speed, real topics. It's scary at first, but incredibly rewarding once you get into the rhythm.
And no matter what level you're at, repetition is your best friend. Listening to the same audio multiple times is not cheating, it's training. Each time you notice something new.
That's such an important point. People think progress means constantly consuming new content, but real improvement often comes from revisiting the same material until it feels comfortable.
Now let's talk about discipline, because this is where most plans fall apart. You don't need hours a day. Honestly, 15 to 30 minutes of focused listening every day beats cramming for 3 hours on the weekend.
Absolutely. Daily exposure keeps the language alive in your brain. When you take long breaks, you're basically starting over each time. Consistency builds momentum.
I like to tell learners to attach listening practice to an existing habit. Morning coffee, evening walk, commuting. That way it becomes automatic instead of a chore.
And while we're talking about habits, I want to touch on something deeper. Gratitude and kindness. This might sound unrelated, but it's not.
Not at all. When you practice gratitude, being thankful for small progress, for understanding one more sentence than yesterday, you reduce self-criticism. And when you're kinder to yourself, learning becomes lighter.
And kindness toward others matters too. When you help someone, explain a word, or simply listen patiently, you reinforce your own learning. Teaching and sharing deepen understanding.
Language is about connection, after all. The more you see English as a tool to connect with people, not a test to pass, the more natural listening becomes.
So if we wrap everything up, the best way to practice listening isn't some secret trick. It's a clear process, the right level of material,
daily consistency, and a mindset that allows mistakes.
Exactly. Be patient, be curious, and show up every day, even on days when you feel like you're not improving. Because trust me, your brain is doing the work behind the scenes.
And one day, you'll realize you're understanding more without trying so hard. That's when you know it's working.
And that moment makes all the effort worth it.